Well, once again, thank you for turning up on this episode. Today, we would like to talk about the management of toxic emotions in marriage using the SPAP model. And as you know, SPAP refers to S, space, P, patience, A, authority, and the other P, power. So we'd like to use that model to see how we can manage the 4 psychological types of marriage that create toxic emotions. Remember, in the last episode, we talked about the 4 psychological types of marriage that lead to marital symptoms that create toxic emotions and toxicity in marriage, or the way people live together, the way they might find it hard to live together. Once again, the half marriage is where we looked at where one partner is aggressive and the other is passive, which creates toxicity in marriage. And in married singles, we did look at where one is doing something different, or they are living a different lifestyle, or they are involved in different life activities, though they are living under the same roof. And childlike marriage is where somebody does not take adult responsibility, but they live like children, and there is no serious commitment in the marital relationship or in the living arrangement as married people. While in the sadomasochistic marriage, we did see that one partner behaves as a sadist, while the other is in machoism. That is to say, one enjoys inflicting pain to the other, and while the other enjoys receiving that pain. That's what we are calling sadomasochistic. In this episode today, we do see that these 4 psychological types of marriage have an effect on people's marital living arrangement, whereby in half marriage, we already look at the emotions, aggressivity and passivity, which on the emotional seesaw that I had explained earlier, it creates an issue in the way people live together, and they don't have chance to live healthy emotions within their marital arrangement. Same thing to the half married singles, childlike marriage, and in sadomasochistic. And those are the effects. The effects here is that, first thing, this creates toxicity in the SPAP. It creates toxicity, or it creates toxic space. Remember, SPAP is looking at S, which is the space, P, which is the patience, A, which is the authority, and the other P is the power. So, toxicity in the SPAP as a result of these 4 psychological types of marriage, you realize that the space that is being shared by the married people, it will have toxic space in terms of the physical space, whereby people are not sharing the same space, and you will see this coming out very well in the half marriage, in the married single, and in the childlike marriage, where the space being shared is toxic, is aloof, the physical space. And even in the emotional space, you will see that there is a toxic emotions in the emotional space, and there will be toxic space in terms of the spiritual space. If people have that kind of background of spirituality, if it is to pray, you'll find somebody they are not praying together, they are not praying at the same time, they're having difficulty to create what we call space alignment. There is a misalignment in the space. There is a misalignment in the interactivity between the people that are married, which creates toxic emotions and toxic space in terms of the SPAP. And this will lead still to toxic patience, where people lose their cool within the 4 psychological types of marriage. One will lose their cool in terms of if they are half married, or they are married single, or they are childlike marriage. The patience disappears. And also in terms of the authority, the way people use their power, and that becomes a problem. You will see people pulling ropes in terms of authority. Who should be in charge here? If we are talking about the one of the partner, whether it is the husband or the man or the wife, there is a struggle over authority, and that brings a struggle over power in the SPAP, hence creating SPAP toxicity in the 4 psychological types of marriage. Having looked at the SPAP toxicity that come out within the 4 psychological types of marriage, we would like now to begin seeing how do you use the space, patience, authority, and the power to manage the effects of these 4 psychological types of marriage among the married people or people's living arrangement that are married in any setting. Number 1, we need to start by carrying out what we call SPAP mapping. We map the space. How much physical space does your partner need? Sometimes, when people are not in good terms, there are times when you need to leave each other some simple space, physical space or emotional space or spiritual space or even psychological space. You see, when people are using these SMS or their WhatsApp, somebody can send you a lot of information which becomes an information overload in a way that one of the partners or both partners, they receive toxic emotions that will disturb them. So it is good to map and know how much physical space, how much emotional space, how much social space, in a way to say, who are the people that interact, that hang out with your partner. You need to know them, and also what is your partner's social life in a way that we do not encroach on each other's space. That's what I'm calling space mapping. We map on those 5 dimensions of the space. Dimension number 1, I did say it's the physical dimension. Dimension number 2 is the emotional dimension. Dimension number 3 is the social dimension. Dimension number 4 is the intellectual space or psychological space. How much thoughts, how much conversation are you extending to your partner? It can encroach on one's partner's space. Then the last dimension is the spiritual space in terms of the space mapping. So as a partner, one needs to map how much space are you leaving for your partner, which will, in a way, once one maps very well the space, you'll know how to manage these 4 psychological types of marriage. You'll know how to manage the half marriage. If one partner is aggressive or is passive, you'll know how to manage the space. If one partner is in single or married single, you'll know how to manage their space. If it is childlike marriage, you know how to manage their space. If it is, sadomasochistic, we know how to manage or map out the space. So space mapping. The second on our SPAP model, which is the patience P, we look at how we can map out how much patience does your partner need? How much patience do you need with your partner? In other words, we shall see later on that in the SPAP we look at the interactivity and interconnectivity. How much space, patience space does your partner need? How much do you need to tolerate with your partner? How much do you need to tolerate with a passive or an aggressive partner? How much do you need to tolerate or to to put up or to persevere with a partner who has grown up with childish or childlike traits or tendencies that create a childlike marriage, or one that is sadomasochistic or acts like a sadist or a machoism, pushes the other on the wall in a way they enjoy creating pain in the other, and in a way the other enjoys receiving pain from the partner. So cool, we are looking at patience mapping. And we need to map also the authority. How much authority do you need to live with your partner, and do they need to live with you? And how much power do you need to live with your partner, and do they need to live with you? Hence the SPAP mapping. We are mapping the space, we are mapping the patience, we are mapping the authority, we are mapping the power. So after mapping, our next phase in the SPAP model that we are using to manage this toxicity in marriage is we need to begin looking at SPAP availability, space availability. How much space are you going to create for your partner? For instance, physical space. When there is a quarrel, when one partner is aggressive and the other is passive, how much space do you need to, physical space do you need to create? In space availability, we are looking at creation of physical space, creation of emotional space, taking care of each other's emotions, kind of, looking at how do I manage the emotion of my partner that is being pushed aggressively on the wall, or that has been keeping quiet and tanking these emotions through passivity. And that's what we are calling space availability in terms of the emotional, space availability in terms of the social. Cool. Some of our partners have people that they want to hang out with. This time out, hanging out with a friend or with a workman or with the children, or even sometimes with your partner, but in a way that respects each other's social interactivity, building space, creating space, that is creates some form of availability for each other's partner. So what we are looking at as space availability, even the spiritual space. For those that are prayerful, that are spiritual, when a partner needs time to have individual prayers or to pray or to go out for a recollection, this is needed because it builds some form of spirituality and it quenches some spiritual thirst that the SPAP toxicity did empty or disorganized. So we need to look at also availability of the authority and availability of the power. How much authority does the husband have? How much authority than the wife has within this marriage? Being a transactional relationship, we do look at some kind of availability for each other in terms of power and in terms of authority. Now, in the management of still the emotion, the toxic emotions, we would like to see how we use the SPAP sharing. Remember, we looked at availability of SPAP. Now we want to look at sharing of SPAP. We want to see the sharing of the space, the sharing of the patience, the sharing of the authority, the sharing of the power. That's what is going to call what we call harmonization or harmonization within the marriage system, within the marital living arrangement that keeps the partners engaged with each other in a way that is productive, that will heal, one, the half marriage, that will heal the aggressivity, the passiveness that did appear in half marriage, that will heal the married single traits and tendencies that appeared among married singles, that will heal the childlike marriage, that will heal the sadomasochistic marriage among the people that are living within a marital setup or a marital arrangement. So we want to see if it is space sharing. Right now we are looking at SPAP sharing. Space sharing, how much space do you avail for each other? How much space do you share with each other? How much patience do you share with each other? For instance, if you are a fast person, if you're a morning person or an evening person and your partner is not, we need to share physical space. We might change and you move from one room or from one working space or from one living space to another, which helps revitalize, rebuild the energy, to rebuild back the emotions into a balance, into an emotional balance within the marital system. Now, we do look at also sharing patience. How much do we share? How much tolerance? As people that are married, we do understand that there are moments when married people are too close to each other. The more you become so close to each other, as Socrates said, that sometimes too much love breeds hatred. You realize that the more people are so close to each other, it's the more at a certain time, they will clash. So that form of clashing is what will create some toxicity among the marrieds that will need some level of patience, putting up with each other, putting up with each other's mess, putting up with each other's lack of availability, lack of presence, or if they may be present but not fully involved. The patience is needed among married people. Patience is the golden opportunity even that breeds forgiveness, if we are talking about people that want to forgive each other within a marital setting. And if we are patient with each other, that's what is going to create a healthy environment for us as married people. On our next, we want to see how we share the authority, how we share the function of the power that we have, the function of the power of the husband, the function of the power of the wife. As I did say earlier on, wife, some guy say that it's wisdom invited forever. And that's why research has it that married people live longer, and they live a happier life, and they live, so to say, an organized life. So how much power do we share? We need to share that power. And that's what is going to create an internal balance, what we call the homeostasis within the marital system. That helps to create the balance within the marital system and among the married people. Hence, hitting again those 4 psychological types of marriage using SPAP sharing. We are sharing the space, we are sharing the patience, we are sharing the authority, we are sharing the power. Now, on my last, I want us to look at SPAP management. How do we manage the SPAP? How do we manage the space? How do we manage the patience? How do we manage the authority? How do we manage the power? Such that when these 4 components of the SPAP model are managed, this is what will create complete healing. And the good news is that we don't need to go into school to study this. Some people can manage this naturally, others they can be aided to manage this. So to manage the space in marriage, we need some form or some level of interactivity. That's why this time I want to begin by physical space. How do we interact physically as married people? Do we have time to touch, to hug, to quench? Even if it means kissing, but it's time for each other. We manage our physical space. Do we have time, physical time for each other? We need to create that physical time. We need to have that physical time. And that's what is going to create the management of the physical space, management of the emotional space. If we are to manage that emotional space, we need to have a certain level of emotional interactivity. For instance, if a partner comes from work and one of the bosses, had too much work, or they had a lot of results that were needed, there were a lot of tasks, and this partner comes back in the evening when they are exhausted. They are in a low mood. Now, one who that is not in the low mood, or even if both of us are in the low mood, we need to boost up each other by encouraging each other. In other words, the best way we are going to encourage each other to create a management of this space, the emotional space, we need some level of emotional engagement. Create time out. Create time for only the 2 of you. It becomes challenging sometimes when children come in. Of course, those children will need that part of that space. We need to create time for each other. You need time for each other to manage your space. The other aspect that we need to manage is the social space. We manage the interactivity, the interconnectivity. You realize that when you get married, some of the friends will wane off naturally. You'll get new friends. Your best friend should be your partner. If you are in a relationship and your partner is not your best friend, then no, you are working on something that may not work out well in the next few years or in a couple of years. We need to also manage the spiritual space. Do we have time to pray together? Do we pray for each other? Do we encourage? Do we read together a spiritual book? Something that creates an aligned energy within the marital system. We create alignment. That kind of alignment is what is going to create the spiritual space management. The other form of alignment that we need is the intellectual space management or the psychological. If one of the partner is bogged down by an activity or by something, asking too much and being too investigative, instead it creates toxicity. So we need to leave some intellectual space, share. You can share a book, you can share a thought where one of the partner is struggling. We need to see how we manage the patience. Sometimes some of us, we think we are too patient, yet we are bottling emotions. Or you think the other partner is too patient and they are too understanding, yet you are pushing them to bottle emotions. Point number one, be patient with yourself. It will be a breeding ground for you to be patient with your partner. That will help us to manage our patience. We need to manage our authority within the marriage. We need to manage how we exercise our power within the marriage. We need to manage also the power levels that we have. Some of us have been raised in domineering or dominant settings where we think that you need to show how you are so dominant. We need to see how do you manage that. In a way, having kind of a transaction, you need to transact some power between you and your partner. And that's what is going to create the healing on those 4 psychological types of marriage.